having me. I'm so excited to be here. According to the dictionary, the definition of resilience is the capacity to recover from difficulties quickly. Toughness, the ability for a substance or an object to spring back into shape, elasticity. But resilience is way more messy than that. It's not always quick. And what if we're not meant to spring back into the same shape? What if resilience is transformation into something new? At 26, I decided to quit my job and start building a dream. My company, Scripted, wanted to dismantle the inefficient and exclusionary practices of Hollywood. I've never been more clear, more driven, more committed to a vision in my entire life. Laser focus is an understatement. I spent nearly a decade trying to prove to two formulaic industries to take a chance on my vision. 7 years of asking them to acknowledge my worth to build the thing that I knew would work to save an industry in turmoil. 7 years of pushing to mediocre success. I pushed for a long time with a limited team, trying to garner new metrics, new data points, attaching celebrities to sales and projects. But something wasn't crystallizing, and I didn't know how to get it to solidify to get them to see what I saw. Trying to fix an industry riddled with inequity while vying for capital in another one equally as riddled was devastating. I had one investor tell me, Denise, I feel it in my bones. I feel it in my bones that what you are building has the capacity to create great change, but I cannot justify it to my LPs. Can you just put some more money in it to get me more proof? How do you de-risk technology when you don't have the resources to continue developing it? But I was in denial. I thought that if I just kept pushing and working hard, that eventually we'd get the investment we needed to succeed. My company died, I brought it back to life with new partners, then we had an investor, then he pulled out, and I felt like I was living Groundhog Day. I had nearly 10 investors say they were going to invest, only to pull out last minute or to never send the term sheets. After moving through each disappointment without too much thought, I finally took a step back to ask myself why it wasn't working. The universe was speaking to me, but I wasn't listening because I wanted this future so bad. I decided to start public speaking about my fundraising journey. And I had a lot of friends, founder friends, venture capitalist friends, that told me I shouldn't do my last talk, which is a data-driven narrative on how inequity hurts venture capital financially. They told me I'd look like a depreciated asset in the market, that I would look like I was whining because every founder shared the same story. My response to them was that I have no interest in participating in a system that doesn't value diverse ideas, that inhibits its own potential. We don't question systems, they stay the same. My responsibility as a citizen is bigger than my company. When we stay silent, we say that it is okay. And the question we should be asking is, why are we afraid to speak up? Why are we afraid to innovate a financial vehicle for innovation? The idea that I had to be something, some type of way, some type of woman to achieve is destructive. Oftentimes, the archetype that is rewarded in venture capital is patriarchal leadership, no matter the gender, as we've seen in the fallout of many companies over the past couple of years. In fact, there was a study done this past year that said the key determining factor in whether or not you get funded is gender. And in the unlikely event that we fund women, we fund them in female-leading categories. So fashion, beauty, wellness, by women, for women. When we are women that don't fit that pattern, our opportunity for funding goes down 50% of the 2% of venture capital that is available to women. Or as one investor told me, Denise, just start a different business and I'll back it. Which is code for your business is not where I feel comfortable with you leading. I admire that version of myself now. She was relentless, transfixed, and obsessed. But when my brain and my willpower could no longer will this larger vision into fruition, I cried. I cried and I cried because my heart broke. I cried because I learned the glass ceiling is alive and well. I cried for all the stories we couldn't help usher into the universe, the careers we couldn't build. But mostly I cried because my company was dying and I couldn't save it. I had to sit with the pain, with the grief, with the heartache, with the failure, with the anger, with every single emotion that I didn't give space to and just sit. And I sat for a few months. As Glennon Doyle says, sometimes the gift of our greatest breakdowns is they teach us how to be human. And human I became. As I made the tough call to shut down my company, what transpired was like the most gorgeous funeral. It was eulogized for 72 hours by my core team, leaders in our community, people I had met once, and complete strangers. Carol Dweck, author of Mindset, asked, do we do things for the success, or do we do them because we believe the effort was valid? There was no better use of my time. It was clear we made an impact, just not the one I had sought out to. But that doesn't mean there isn't a cost, a burden to being too future. We were building for a moment that was ahead of us that is only now starting to become real. Every single prediction I've made about Hollywood has come true. I was recently watching the Bryan Stevenson documentary, and I don't know if you guys know who he is, but he is the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative and somebody I greatly admire. And in the documentary, Bryan says something along the lines of, what no one tells you about pushing against rooted systems is that it breaks you. And when it breaks you, you join the broken. And I started bawling, like ugly, messy crying. And I was sort of surprised. But in those two sentences, Bryan summed up the past 7 years of my life. Those two sentences sparked an awareness of what I had been through. Capitalism asks us to keep trying despite all the systemic inequities we have yet to cure. I naively believed that I was the exception to the rule, that if I just worked hard enough, I could achieve anything. But as my startup journey began, endured, and ended, I could no longer pretend that was true. It's one thing to build a business. It's another to learn the truth of society. The reckoning of that truth has been a lot harder for me to swallow. People don't really talk about professional pain. We tend to discount it compared to relationship pain. But it's its own version of grief. Your dream dying is loss. Because when you build something from your heart, it is heartbreak. Best-selling author Sarah Wilson says, we grieve what we love. David White, another great author, says the process of grief is like falling in love. We fall and fall and fall until we land at ourselves. And that's exactly what happened. Because I didn't just build a business, I built a purpose. And the beauty of building a purpose is it can have a multitude of expressions. My purpose is to be a place to share and uplift other people's stories. My company Scripted was a place to share people's stories. My podcast is a place to share people's stories. Through the grief, one thing ran true. I had something to say. And I knew I had to speak because the jail of complicity is real. And now I can't stop talking because my story is not the one we allow to be heard. The one we allow to be heard is the person who made it. We get all of their struggles from the rearview mirror of success. We did not make it. In fact, if I look at what I wanted to achieve, we failed. We did not meet my expectation of success. And my story is far more common than the other one. But what is making it? At what cost? I'm learning more and more each day about following my joy, appreciating the process rather than the destination, that when life breaks you, it changes what you want. I no longer subscribe to any of the systems this country has told me that I should. So where does that leave me? What do I believe in? Well, I believe in truth. I believe in joy. I believe in facts. I believe in humans. I've been spending my time dreaming about what it would look like to rebuild the world for all, how to be more holistic in business, how to heal, how to honor our human mistakes. I'm ready for that world. There is a price to resilience, and it will cost you your former life. But as Martha Beck says, my old life was stupid and it sucked, and my new life is awesome. And she couldn't be more right. Because I may not have had an IPO, but I am richer on the day than the day I started on this journey. I am whole, I'm well, I'm fulfilled. I've known greater kindness, greater story, greater connection, greater empathy, greater authenticity than I thought I could ever know. I transformed, and that is a priceless gift. If we stick to purpose, we have limitless possibility. Speaking has become a new expression of my purpose. I feel oddly at home here with all of you. And I want you to know that your work might break you, but it will also make you. That resilience may not be quick. It might take stillness, lots and lots of stillness. That grief isn't linear. I'm still going through bouts of grief. We don't have to bounce back right away. These wounds are deep, and these oppressive structures we operate in aren't real. So do you, know you, be you. There is no better use of your time. And when you are ready, your new dreams will find you. Thank you.
We are open to taking questions as well, or Denise is open to taking questions. So more than happy to welcome any of you guys up here to speak into the mic and ask any questions for the next sort of 10 minutes or so.
Don't be shy. I cried on stage in front of you.
Thank you so much, Denise. I have a question for you. Now that you're speaking, what do you hope your impact will be with this sort of new approach?
Yeah, I think that it's really important when you're trying to create systemic change. You have to figure out the way that is generative to you. And I think what I realized along the way is that the process of raising capital to try and create a system shifting product was not generative for me. Speaking is really generative for me. And the ability to, after 7 years of basically speaking truth into a void, to go into a place where people have open hearts and open ears, for me is a lot more quick in terms of how can I facilitate greater change to get people to think about things differently. And so that, I think, is always the answer is we have to find the change making work that makes sense for our personal DNA.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I think my question would be, what would be your advice to female founders to be able to walk through this journey? We know the statistics, but what would be those solid tips you would give to say, to break these barriers and maybe form a coalition? I don't know. What ideas do you have?
Yeah, I think you need to, if I had to do everything over again, one of the things I would have done was, at the time, I was like an executive producer at 25, started my company. Like there was never, the idea that I was going to fail was not even in my brain. So that was naive, which I think you only start companies when you're naive, because if you know what you're up against, you don't do it. But I would have built a mechanism that we weren't relying on venture capital, that we weren't relying on investment. And that's really where, as I advise founders now, I'm like, go for it, take a swing, but build mechanisms that can support you if you don't get the funding. Don't be reliant on that as a tool, because obviously based on the data, it's not the best tool for us. So whether that's like if you're building CPG, you pre-sales, you get that money in earlier. I will say the one thing that's also true is that you attract what you are. So I may not have raised all the money that we need to raise, but everyone raised from, I have a heavenly cap table, angels from above. Like I have had zero issues with my investors where a lot of my peers can't say the same. And I was very clear about that. I didn't want to take misaligned money, because for me, we were building a product that was focused on helping Hollywood reverse engineer to inclusion through data. And so I was never going to put inclusion on the back burner, though I was asked too many times by investors. And so I think that those are the two things. Find the people that make sense to you and figure out ways to not be reliant on VC.
Denise, thanks so much for being here and for your honesty. You mentioned something in your talk about a lot of what you thought about the industry has come true in terms of things that entertainment needed to reckon with. Can you speak to some of those things and maybe what else you think needs to?
Yeah, so I was a producer prior to starting my company, so I knew a lot about like the inefficiencies of the business side of Hollywood. And like, if you look at the data, like the crystallizing points on a matrix, I knew that inclusion was going to become the number one driver of profits in a niche marketplace, number one. So for example, when before Black Panther came out, I was like, yeah, this movie's gonna do $1 billion globally. Everyone Hollywood's like, no, it's not, no, it's not. And I was like, okay, let's wait and see. Yes, it did, right? There was all these things like when the Writers Guild sued the agencies, I also predicted that there was going to be a big disruption with that because writers aren't being serviced by agencies anymore, right? So if that your job is to service these writers and you're taking money from them without actually servicing their needs, you're going to hit a business problem. And so they did, they got sued, right? All these small things that I was like understanding were going to hit and the product we built could address them all. We built something to like ease the workflow of Hollywood, help them make more money and have them like, sort of like Trojan horse us to more inclusion. And it just was met with resistance on both sides, whether that's entertainment and VC. It's clear, people have to be ready to create the change they want to see in the world. And, then we met with a company, a legacy Hollywood company, 3 white men who ripped off our product and raised venture capital money. And you sit there and you're like, okay, well, what's going on? I've been doing this for X amount of years because I don't have the resume or the credibility of these guys, but you're like, it shouldn't matter because they could have acquired me. They could have done a bunch of other things. And this is where we see how the exclusion of others inhibits our own potential because it's more about power than it is actually about money, right? And so that's really the hard part. And that was really hard for me to sort of witness and metabolize.
Hi, Denise. We're so excited. Oh, thank you so much for your honesty. I'm curious to hear what your next big ideas are for the future.
Oh, man. So many. I'm working with a fund now where my podcast is all about the intersection of business and spirituality. I believe that deep inner work equates to long-term outer success. I think that in a lot of the leaders we have propped up, we have not given them the tools to be great leaders. And so I'm working with a fund now that is using my podcast as sort of a blueprint to help us maybe hopefully invest in the next class of leadership. I think it's more than just writing a check. I think it's more than letting people run away with unethical behavior. So that's like one of the things I'm doing in the near term is that hopefully, it's an experiment. I don't know if it's going to work. I have a lot of questions around the structure of venture capital. I think a lot of the incentives create bad leadership. So I don't know. I mean, these are the things where it's like we have to try things to see if things can change. I'm also very interested. I have a lot of extremist ideas. I'm very interested in like what it would look like to not be a capitalist culture on the exploitation of others. I think that we do not take care of humans, and I'm a big person that values humanity over profits. So I don't know. We'll see.
We have time for a few more questions if anyone has any.
Hi, Denise. Thanks for being here. So you were trying to disrupt Hollywood, right? Which is a big system of things with everything set in place. And now you're here trying to disrupt, the funding space and kind of communicate that. What are I guess, how do you break down such a broad goal into smaller pieces where you can say, hey, let me achieve this one small goal first, well, that adds up to the bigger thing. Because if you try to go for the bigger thing, right? Like at work, we're always just like break down your big goals into like methods and targets, whatever.
To give you an understanding of what we built, we basically reinvented the screenplay format. So Hollywood right now has only disrupted in the distribution space. So everything prior to that has stayed the same since 1920. So we basically were like, realized that no one wants to read screenplays. Even people in Hollywood hate reading courier font. So we made it a new automated the tech. No, I know it's insanity. We automated the tech to take that courier font thing and turn it into sort of like a text message based story. So it was more accessible so you guys could read it like you would a book, right? The goal being if we're optioning best-selling books and best-selling articles at a very rapid rate in Hollywood because of a presumed audience base, built-in audience base. Best-selling books sell 50,000 copies on any given week. The anomaly is the one that sells 1 million. So we're scrambling to option these things for built-in audience base of 50,000 people, and we don't know who they are. This makes zero sense, right? So what if you had real-time audience data? We have this new screenplay, 1 million people read it, we know who they are, where they are, then you can create, oh, how much am I investing in this movie? How am I creating a customized marketing distribution plan to recoup investment on it? De-risk every property and then understand how to like take that data and put it in the larger value chain of Hollywood, right? At the same time, you're shortening the development cycle because you're not optioning the book, getting a screenwriter to write it, and then that's in development for X amount of months. You're throwing millions of dollars into development. Say that screenwriter doesn't write the draft you want, you're starting from scratch. There's a lot of sunk money in Hollywood in like crazy ways where you have a thing called development hell. I have this script that I put $10 million into that we haven't made. What if we could understand if you actually want to leverage that property with the public? Take it back out of development hell, see how it does, right? And I was looking at all the ways to like get that money back and de-risk us for new properties. And that was, for me, in a simple way as I know, audiences want more inclusive content. By just putting it out there to the public's gonna prove my point. I don't need to like convince you, I just need to say, let's get the audience to read the content. And so that's what we were building. It was just a very simple thing to address a lot of legacy issues.
Thank you.
Give me just 1 minute.
Hi Denise, thanks again for being here. Where are you seeing in Hollywood or elsewhere momentum that gets you excited and hopeful?
Whoa. In Hollywood, not so much. I don't think Hollywood's ready to embrace technology in the way that they should. Am I excited to see more inclusive content in front of the camera? Yes. Do we still have a dearth of inclusion behind the camera? Yes. Like 87% of screenwriters represented are still white men in Hollywood, right? So there's still a huge discrepancy in terms of who is writing the content. 90% of TV comes from the agencies. So 90% of TV is written by white men. So there's a lot of stuff like that. We have a long way to go. We're making strides, sure. What am I excited about? That's a great question. I'm doing a lot of reading around ways to make business more holistic. And what are the principles we can ingest in the DNA of companies day one that will take them where they need to go? So for example, just in terms of DEI, you don't bake it into the company before Series B. You will never, in the history of time, not one company has successfully gone backward and made an inclusive culture. So these are things which like we have the ability to do if we think a little bit more long-term. And a lot of companies when they're scaling, they're like, I'm just growing, I'm hiring all these people, I'm just whoever's around, I'm hiring. And it's like, you're hindering your own upside beyond your Series B. Because it's been proven, right? You make more money and you're more innovative, more collaborative when you have a more inclusive workspace. So these are the things that I think we have the power to change now. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm excitement. There's people that I think have great ideas that I'm really responding to. There's also great thinkers, like there's a guy that wrote this book about life after capitalism in 1990. And I'm like, oh man, talk about being too future. That is tough. And like, he's written all the things that we need to know to like figure out how to bridge the time that we're in to make the world a little bit more less divisive.
Hi, Denise. I just wanted to ask about your podcast idea, how you came up with focusing on the intersection of business and spirituality, and what were some of the most valuable things that you've learned throughout your podcasting process.
Oh, thank you.
So my sort of journey ended up becoming a deep, deep spiritual journey. I don't know if everyone has that experience, but I think when you're building a company, really, if things aren't going well, you have no one to face but yourself. So you need tools to figure out how to, do that gracefully. I was really lucky in the process of building my company. I met amazing, like there's like five, I call them like my 5 sage women, like these women that just, some C-suite, some had huge success in Hollywood, had big wellness companies, and they just embodied leadership I wanted to see in the world. And I was getting this like gift of their wisdom. And I was like, well, this isn't really fair for me to like hoard. I need to like give it to the world. And they were embodying the leadership that I want to see in the world. And so that was really what I realized, like it exists, it's all around us. But the media story that the people we prop up are not the people that are embodying heart-centered leadership. And so one of my mentors, she was like the CPO at Lululemon and Athleta. She took over at Nasty Gal for Sophia. And Sherry is this person that like, even when things are hard, because she was going through the ringer a couple times when we were spending time together, she is still like the most magnetic life force energy. And I was like, how do you do that? Like, what? I was like, I read every emotion on my face, as you can see. It's like, I just, and she's like, well, because when you're a leader at this level, joy is your responsibility. And I was like, damn. And so it's like things like that I wanted to share with the world, because I think we can learn a lot. And I learned a lot from these people. And so, my podcast is all about like quality, not quantity. It's like not everyone's embodying integrated leadership. So it takes a lot of time to vet and find the right people that can sort of embody what I want to see more of in the world. And I've learned a ton. I mean, it's a beautiful place to explore and do diligence on things that I don't know a lot about. And that's part of the beauty of it is it's expanded my worldview, and it's given me, I go back to listen to episodes and I'm inspired by the people that we have brought on. And I'm really proud of the stories they share. It's been a big gift.
Any last questions from the audience? Natalie and I have one for you. So last word, what piece of advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs, and what piece of advice would you give to our allies in this audience of how to support female entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so there's two things for young entrepreneurs. Take away everything shiny around you. Take away all the false motives, money, power, fame, whatever. You'll be unhappy if you get what you want and succeed in that realm. What is the thing that is speaking to you in your body, in your core, that you have to do? Because building a company, it's like, if you're not all in, 10 years want to fight for it, don't do it. Don't do it. You have to wake up every day and fight. And I know a lot of people who are like, I'm starting this company. I'm like, ooh, no, you're not. Because I can tell their heart's not in it. Your heart has to be in it, because this is grueling. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not easy. We romanticize in our culture, but it's not easy. It's a calling. My brother and my dad are entrepreneur. I did not choose this. It chose me. I did not want to do this. But I think that's really important. Do the thing that lights your heart up. That's number one. For our allies, there's a big difference between intellectually understanding unconscious bias, intellectually understanding issues. We need these issues to be baked into our body so we are not harmful. And I think there's a lot of people that think they are allies and inclusive, but they haven't done that next layer of work to have it in their body, because a lot of times I see people that I think have great intentions, but the rhetoric they use is still harmful. And so I really encourage people to do the diligence and get it into your body, because that is the quickest way we are going to reduce harm in this world.
Great, well, let's give Denise a round of applause. So our next panel, Navigating the Pivot, begins at 11:30 a.m. I should tell you it starts at 11:25, so everyone's in here by 11:30. Please get water break. We have food in the hallway, and yeah, 11:25. Please be back here. Thank you.